You know, the United States of America was the greatest country before Trump, and it's the greatest country now after Trump. The white supremacists want to go back. They want to go back to the days when it was legal to own slaves.
You are about to be entertained by the ape, the young man who has become a legend in his own time. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Oh boy, y'all caught me out there. Oh boy, what a world we are living in today. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program. A little under the weather here. Heard every Thursday, blogtalkradio.com, the RonKellyShow.com, and we're going to WBOK. Shout out to Charlotte Englehart, who was my handler over there in New Orleans at the WBOK 12:30 a.m. who will be debuting on there very, very soon, as soon as I get all my media stuff made. So everybody stay tuned for that. I'll be letting you know. Shout out to the folks who are already listening to the Ron Kelly Show down in WBOK 12:30 a.m. in New Orleans. And this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. The Ron Kelly Show is going to be on as many stations as the Steve Harvey Show. You just wait and see. Anyway, it's just a couple of minutes past the hour. It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program. Man, you got to be careful out there. Be careful because something's going around. And it's getting crazy out there. I was a little under the weather. Thank God it didn't become anything overly serious. I was a little under the weather for the last few days. We're still able to function. I mean, small thing to a giant. But yeah, there's stuff going around. So we may have to start wearing our masks again pretty soon. We may have to start wearing those masks. Anyway, it's about 3 minutes past the hour. It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio Show. It's Thursday. And this is the traditional MLK. This is the actual the birth date of Martin Luther King Jr., January 15th, I believe. So it's going to be Monday because it's a national holiday that Trump is probably going to try to cancel. So stay tuned for that, among all the other things he's doing. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But anyway, yeah, it's today is the birth date, I believe, of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If I'm wrong, somebody please, go on the comments page and let me know. Today's January 15th. And I remember us celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Day on the 15th of January. My memory might be screwed up because I haven't been feeling well lately. But anyway, yeah, watch out. We may have to start going back to the mask thing. But we're going to talk about that. The impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., since I won't be on the air on Monday. But we'll talk about the impact of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the only civil rights leader that the government felt had to be stopped. Dr. Martin Luther King had to be stopped, you see, because Dr. Martin Luther King was the only one that was proposing that white folks and black folks try to live together. Little white boys and little white girls, he said in his famous speech in the March on Washington back in the 60s. And he said in his speech, talked about unity, not just in the black community, but with everybody. White folks didn't like that. They were like, oh, wait a minute, he's talking about, we don't want to be with them. And see, Dr. Martin Luther King was the only civil rights leader who had any real impact on not just in here, but in the world, on the world stage. Dr. Martin Luther King, very eloquent, brilliant orator, and his speeches were scary to white folks. They were like, oh no, we can't have that. And so they had to get rid of Dr. Martin Luther King at any cost, because Dr. Martin Luther King was the one civil rights leader that was able to bring everyone together. Because there was white folks marching, you know, when they on the bridge in Selma, Alabama. There was white folks there. The March on Washington back in the 60s, there's plenty of white folks there. You know, and see, that was the scary part for the government, J. Edgar Hoover and the government of the United States of America back then. Scary stuff. Scary stuff. So they tried to slander Dr. King and say he was having relationships and stuff like that. You know, hey, he's a man. He's a human being. He's a man. And that quite possibly could have been true. Dr. Martin Luther King was revered in the black community, and there was some women, you know, there were some who in most churches, you know, you read about it all the time, about parishioners and pastors getting it in. But anyway, they see, that was, whatever they could do to stain Dr. Martin Luther King's name was done. Whatever they could do. And Dr. Martin Luther King was a real threat to the way things are in America, the United States of America. And that's why they had to get rid of him at 7 minutes past the hour. Yeah. Because, you know, the government, I don't believe that the government killed Malcolm X. I don't believe that for a second. You know, they didn't really care about Malcolm X. You know, the popularity of Malcolm X depended on who you asked. You know, I'm not saying Malcolm X wasn't a leader in the black community. I'm not saying that. But no one, Marcus Garvey, Reverend Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, none of those folks were as impactful as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Again, I don't discount. They made their contribution. You know, they put their work in. They did what they needed to do. But no one had the the Nobel Peace Prize, Dr. Martin Luther King. That was it for the white folks. They was like, oh no, no, we can't have this. But Dr. Martin Luther King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. He was world renowned. White folks just wasn't having it. So, I mean, he'd be in his 90s by now. Maybe he's still alive, who knows? If he had lived, had he not been assassinated by the hateful white folks. See, because they had to do it, because I do believe the United States government was behind it. They're going to be knocking on my door in a minute here at the Ron Kelly Show studio. But I do believe that the United States government did have something to do with the death of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm 100% sure. Anyway, everybody, it's 10 minutes after the hour. We'll get into that. And who is Coonisha? I think I know who that is, but come on, y'all. Coonisha Mimms. Now, I know, councilwoman, council president, city of Patterson, New Jersey. Last name is Mimms. So I'm just guessing that they're talking about her. You see, that's the thing with us, with black folks. You know, that's the thing with us. See, we get mad at each other, then there's a name calling, you're dead to me. That's an Italian phrase. That's what the Goombas and that's what the Goombas would say to each other. That's what the mafia, the mafioso, the Genovese, the, crime family, some of these people would say that. I mean, they didn't intend to kill you, but they would say, you're dead to me, meaning that you're dead to me. You no longer exist. And that's something that we do in the black community when we disagree. You see, because this is a really big problem, right? Because nobody wants to have a conversation You know, you put your cards on the table, you know, I'll put my cards on the table. Let's see if we can find some common ground. And see, we don't do that as black folks. We don't do that. You know, you're dead. You're dead to me. I have nothing, no use for you. And this is what we do. You know, there's no conversation, no middle ground, no, okay, I see your point. No. We disagree, that's it. You no longer exist. You're a dead person. And that's, you know, a problem. Other ethnic groups, they get mad at each other. Maybe they live on the same block and they have the same issue, and they'll say, hey, okay, look, I hate you, but I'm gonna work with you. Because the issue at hand is bigger than you and I. You know, the problem, our mutual problem is bigger than you and I not liking each other. So in the meantime, doesn't mean you're my friend or anything like that, but I'll work with you. Until we can figure out what's going on. See, black folks don't do that. You know, we start calling each other names, public shaming. You know, I'm not speaking to you anymore. It's happened to me hundreds of times. Because I tell it like it is. You know, I say what I think. I don't try to appease anyone. I did that. I've done that. When I first started on radio, I used to do that. I wouldn't say certain things about certain people. You know, I wouldn't say anything about the mayors, especially the highfalutin higher-ups, you know, power folks, for lack of a better word. I wouldn't say anything about them. You know, I would change my whole show so that I don't offend certain people. So I don't do that anymore. If you're offended, you're offended. Oh, well. At 13 minutes past the hour. Yeah. And I used to do that. I didn't talk about the police because I was friends with the police chief in the town where I lived. So I wouldn't talk about the police, even though they needed to be talked about. But I wouldn't talk about them because I didn't want to offend anybody. But that's no way to run a radio show, a talk radio, opinionated, you know. That's no way to do it. Not the way to do it. So I had to start talking about what was on my heart and what I felt. And people didn't like it. And some people don't listen to my show. They're, well, oh, well. You know, see, that's the lack of unity. And there's a lot of good things going on in the black community. There's some organizations that are really, you know, making it, but there's more that's not than there are. You know? So, yeah, you know, there's no unity in our community. No unity. Okay, I need to let everybody know that the views and opinions expressed here are exclusively those of myself and the R. Kelly Media Enterprise LLC, and are not those of my advertisers or my support team. Shout out to everybody who's listening to the Ron Kelly Show right now. I can't see everybody. I can't see YouTube. I can't see LinkedIn. You know, I can't see everybody on Facebook. But I appreciate you taking time out your busy day to check the R out right here on the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program. It's 15 minutes past the hour. But yeah. And you know what? And yeah, I would not talk about certain things because I didn't want to offend certain people. You know, I was good friends with the police chief, city of Patterson, for example, at that time. So I wouldn't talk about the police. I wouldn't talk about the politics. I wouldn't talk about the nonsense that goes on in the council chambers. It's like, you know, it's like a reality show. But I wouldn't talk about that because I didn't want to offend certain people. Because my show came up. You know, I remember sitting in offices and waiting to talk to people for hours, you know, trying to make a name for myself amongst the city government, city of Patterson, New Jersey, for example. I don't live there anymore. But yeah, because my show was politics, local politics based. I got away from that. Now I talk about everything. But yeah, so tonight I'm going to talk about Charlie Kirk, because I've been watching a lot of Charlie Kirk. I've been watching a lot of Charlie Kirk videos, reels. I've been watching a lot of Charlie Kirk reels. Because I just, what? I said, what's the real deal? Because a lot of us, we go by what we hear. That's, the black community in a nutshell. A lot of us don't check out stuff for ourselves. We just, we go by what we heard, what somebody down the street said. We don't do due diligence and try to get as much information as we can to find out what's really going on. We don't do that. We go by what we heard, and it goes back to slavery. Because back in the slavery days, you weren't allowed to read a newspaper, or when they had a newspaper, or listen to the news. Well, there was no radio back then, but you weren't, whatever devices that the white folks were using to gather information, black folks, slaves, were not allowed to use it. So we had to go by word of mouth from one plantation to the next. And that, even though we have technology and social media and there's 20,000 cable news shows and all the technology at our fingertips, cell phones and all kinds of stuff, we still don't look or don't substantiate the stuff that we pass along. You see, and me personally, I always check my sources before I come on the radio or on my podcast talking about anything. I always make sure, and I try to research it as much as possible. If it's something that I can't get any credible information about, I won't talk about it. No, I won't talk about it. I don't talk about stuff unless I got some kind of from some credible, if you can call it that, credible agency, news agency, where I can at least get some kind of, because there's so many, Sky News, MS Now, CNN, you got the networks, CBS, ABC, NBC, all of these places where you can get, you can get some kind of substantiate, what's being told to you. And a lot of us don't do that. And that's, because look what happened with slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was 3 years old before most of the slave communities found out about it. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and folks and the slaves didn't find out in some places till 3 or 4 years later after he signed it. They didn't know that they were slaves because didn't know they were no longer slaves because they weren't allowed to source any news or newspaper or whatever they had back in the day, telegraph. They weren't allowed. Read a book, read a newspaper. Many of the folks couldn't read. A lot of them grew up in the plantation and weren't allowed to, they secretly educate themselves. But a lot of folks weren't allowed to get any news. So, all right, let me take a break. I'll get back. I'm going to talk about Charlie Kirk. And was he right? Was he right? Or was he wrong? We'll do that. It's about 20 minutes past the hour. We'll take a break, come back with more. It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program, WBOK 1230 AM in New Orleans. It's Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and blog Talk Radio. Yes, indeed, I am the man. What a news cycle this is. This guy has got to go. Trump has got to go. George Floyd snuffed out by this police officer who's supposed to be serving and protecting people.
It's the Ron Kelly Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back. It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program, and it's on blogtalkradio.com, the Ron Kelly Show.com. The Ron Kelly Show is being sponsored by, in part, by Amica and Puerto Rico Transportation. Don't you know, for 45 years, since 1980, 45 years, the Amica and Puerto Rico Transportation has been your source for safe and reliable transportation all throughout the tri-state area and beyond. So if you had a casino trip planned, a church trip, school districts, private school transportation, you name it, Amica and Puerto Rico can handle it. Give them a call. 908-753-6423, 908-753-6423, 908-753-6423, or you can reach them at amica.porterfield at verizon.net, amica.porterfield at verizon.net. Okay, it's 22 minutes past the hour. It's the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program on a Thursday. It's January 15th, and this is normally would be the birth date, I believe, of Dr. Martin Luther King. I think, wait a minute, let me see, it's, his birthday was January 15th. Today was the actual birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but they moved it, I think, because to make a 3-day weekend out of it. But ordinarily, Dr. King's birthday would be today. Dr. King's birthday is today, January 15th. But it'll be celebrated as a national holiday on the 19th of January, which is Monday. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining me here on the Ron Kelly Talk Radio program. Shout out to the BOK, WBOK 1230 AM folks in New Orleans that want to lead them out. They just had a new mayor. They just celebrated a new mayor. It's the very first female mayor. Very first female, black or white, very first female mayor ever in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. What does that mean? I know we had Barack Obama. Barack Obama was the first black president of the United States of America, the most powerful person on the face of the earth, the president of the most powerful nation in the world, the United States of America. We had Barack Obama. Man, we all thought that our day had come. Now, I'm not talking about New Orleans anymore. I'm talking about Barack Obama. We thought that our day had come. We got a black president. Our troubles are over. Slavery is over. Profiling is over. Driving while black, shopping while black, walking while black. We thought that stuff was over, and well, I didn't, but a lot of folks did, and everybody got very disappointed. And, and see, I don't blame Barack Obama for what happened. United States of America. I don't blame him for that. I don't blame Barack Obama for that. Because many folks that really don't understand politics thought that he was supposed to be the president for black folks.